Marcus Blackwood stepped out of his silver Bentley, the gravel crunching beneath his handmade Italian shoes. The familiar sight of his mansion greeted him, its towering columns and perfectly manicured gardens a testament to his vast wealth. After 3 weeks of intense business negotiations in Tokyo, all he wanted was the peace and quiet of his empty home. At 42, Marcus had built an empire from nothing. Blackwood Industries now spanned across 3 continents, dealing in everything from technology to real estate. His success had cost him everything personal in his life. His wife had left him 5 years ago, taking their young daughter Emma with her. The divorce had been messy and public, leaving Marcus bitter and isolated. The mansion, with its 37 rooms, had become his fortress. He employed a small staff who knew to stay invisible during his presence. The head butler, Richardson, managed everything perfectly, ensuring Marcus never had to deal with the mundane details of running such a large household. As Marcus approached the front door, he noticed something odd. Usually, the house was completely silent when he returned from business trips. Today, however, he could hear faint voices coming from inside. His jaw tightened with irritation. He had specifically instructed Richardson to ensure the house remained undisturbed during his absence. Marcus pushed open the heavy oak door and stepped into the marble foyer. The voices were clearer now, coming from the direction of the formal dining room. Children's laughter echoed through the halls, a sound that hadn't been heard in his home for years. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. He moved silently across the marble floor, his expensive shoes making no sound. As he approached the dining room, he could make out the distinct voices of what seemed to be several children. The anger building in his chest was almost overwhelming. Someone had violated the sanctity of his home. Peering around the corner, Marcus froze at the sight before him. At his grand dining table, the one reserved for important business dinners and formal occasions, sat 4 children. They appeared to range in age from about 6 to 12 years old. Their clothes were clean but obviously inexpensive, and they were eating what looked like sandwiches and fruit. Standing near them was a young woman he didn't recognize. She was petite, probably in her mid-20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a plain gray dress and comfortable shoes, clearly one of the cleaning staff. What shocked him most was how comfortable she seemed, as if she belonged there. The woman was cutting an apple into slices, distributing them among the children with the practiced ease of someone who had done this many times before. The children chatted quietly among themselves, occasionally giggling at something one of them said. It was a scene of domestic warmth that felt completely foreign in his cold, sterile home. Marcus watched in stunned silence as the woman helped the youngest child, a little girl with curly blonde hair, reach for a glass of milk. There was something tender and natural about her movements, something that reminded him of memories he had tried hard to forget. "Sophia, slow down," the woman said gently to a girl who was wolfing down her sandwich. "The food isn't going anywhere." Sophia, who looked to be about 8 years old, smiled sheepishly and took smaller bites. The oldest child, a boy who appeared to be around 12, was helping a younger boy with his homework while they ate. It was clear these children were well-behaved and cared for, despite their modest circumstances. Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions washing over him. Anger at the violation of his space mixed with confusion about who these children were and why they were in his home. But underneath it all was something else, something he couldn't quite identify. The scene reminded him of the family dinners he had never had, the warm home life that had always eluded him. The woman suddenly looked up, her eyes meeting his across the room. Her face went pale with shock, and she immediately stood up straighter. Marcus could see the fear in her eyes as she recognized who he was. "Mr. Blackwood," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I can explain." The children, sensing the sudden tension, stopped eating and looked between the woman and Marcus. Their happy chatter died away, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that filled the grand dining room. Marcus stepped into the room, his presence commanding attention. He was a tall man, over 6 feet, with dark hair that was beginning to show gray at the temples. His sharp business suit and expensive watch made it clear he was a man of significant means and power. "I'm waiting for that explanation," Marcus said, his voice cold and controlled. "Who are you, and what are these children doing in my home?" The woman's hands trembled slightly as she placed them protectively near the children. My name is Elena Rodriguez, sir. I work for the cleaning service that maintains your home. These are my children, and my sister's children. I'm so sorry. I know I shouldn't have brought them here. Marcus studied her face, noting the honesty in her brown eyes despite her obvious fear. Your children? All four of them. Elena shook her head quickly. No, sir. Sophia and Miguel are mine, she said, gesturing to the 8-year-old girl and a 10-year-old boy. Isabella and Carlos belong to my sister. She died in a car accident 3 months ago. I've been caring for all 4 children since then. The revelation hit Marcus unexpectedly. He had assumed he was dealing with simple trespassing, maybe theft. Instead, he was looking at a woman who had taken on the responsibility of 4 children after a family tragedy. That doesn't explain why they're eating in my dining room, Marcus said, though his voice had lost some of its edge. Elena's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. I clean your home 3 times a week, sir. Usually when you're not here. Today, the children's school had a half-day because of teacher meetings. My regular babysitter was sick, and I couldn't afford to lose a day's work. I thought you were still traveling. I just needed them to have lunch somewhere safe while I finished my work. Marcus looked at the children, who were watching him with wide, uncertain eyes. The youngest, Isabella, was clutching a small stuffed rabbit, her lower lip trembling as if she might cry. Carlos, the oldest, had instinctively moved closer to his younger cousins, ready to protect them if necessary. How long has this been going on? Marcus asked. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. This is the first time, I promise. I know it was wrong. I know I violated your trust and your home. Please, I'll gather the children and leave immediately. I understand if you need to fire me. The desperation in her voice was clear. Marcus realized that losing this job would likely be catastrophic for a woman trying to support 4 children on her own. He found himself studying the makeshift lunch spread on his dining table. Simple sandwiches, fruit, and milk. Nothing expensive or elaborate, just the basics needed to feed growing children. Where do you usually have them stay when you're working? Marcus asked, surprising himself with the question. Elena hesitated before answering. Sometimes with my neighbor, Mrs. Garcia, but she's elderly and gets tired easily. Sometimes I try to clean houses only when they're in school, but that limits the work I can take. Today I had no other option. Marcus walked closer to the table, noting how the children instinctively moved closer together. They had been through trauma, losing their mother, and now they were afraid of losing the stability that Elena provided. How old are you? Marcus asked Elena directly. 26, sir. So young to be responsible for 4 children, Marcus thought. When he was 26, his biggest worry had been closing his next business deal. This woman was dealing with challenges he could barely imagine. And you've been cleaning my home for how long? 8 months, sir. I work for Sterling Cleaning Services. They assigned me to your account. Marcus nodded slowly. He vaguely remembered Richardson mentioning the cleaning service, but he had never paid attention to the individual workers. They came and went like ghosts, leaving his home spotless without him ever seeing them. Isabella, the youngest child, suddenly spoke up in a small voice. Are you going to make Tia Elena go to jail? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. Through a child's eyes, he must appear as a threatening figure who had caught them doing something wrong. The fear in her voice reminded him uncomfortably of his own daughter Emma, whom he rarely saw since the divorce. No one is going to jail, Marcus said, his tone softer than before. Elena, finish feeding the children. Then, we need to talk privately. Elena nodded quickly, relief visible in her face, even though she clearly knew the conversation ahead would determine her future. She began cleaning up the lunch things efficiently, while the children finished eating in nervous silence. Marcus retreated to his study, his mind racing. He had built his entire adult life around control, predictability, and isolation. The scene he had just witnessed challenged every assumption he had made about his perfectly ordered world. As he waited for Elena to join him, Marcus found himself thinking about the way she had interacted with the children. There was no impatience, no frustration despite their obviously difficult circumstances. She had spoken to them with kindness and genuine care, creating a bubble of warmth even in a stranger's home. When Elena finally knocked on his study door, Marcus gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. She perched on the edge of the seat, clearly uncomfortable in the luxurious surroundings. "Tell me about your sister," Marcus said simply. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her voice steady. Maria was a nurse at the county hospital. She worked night shifts to be home with her children during the day. 3 months ago, she was driving home after her shift when a drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. Marcus leaned back in his chair, processing the information. What about the children's father? Carlos was never in the picture. Maria raised Isabella and Carlos alone until I could help her. After she died, there was no one else. I couldn't let them go into the system. And your own children's father? Elena's cheeks reddened slightly. Miguel's father left when he was 2. Sophia's father died in Afghanistan when she was 3. He was deployed there. The catalog of loss and hardship was staggering. Marcus realized he was looking at someone who had faced more genuine challenges in her 26 years than he had encountered in his entire privileged life. "What do you make working for the cleaning service?" Marcus asked. $12 an hour, sir. I usually get about 25 hours a week." Marcus did quick mental math. $300 a week, maybe $1,200 a month before taxes. To feed, clothe, and house 4 children. It was barely survival. "Where do you live?" "We have a 2-bedroom apartment in the Riverside district. The rent is $800 a month. It's not much, but it's clean and safe." Marcus knew the Riverside district. It was one of the older, more affordable areas of the city, but still decent enough for families. The fact that she prioritized safety for the children, even with limited resources, spoke to her character. "Elena," Marcus said finally, "I'm not going to fire you." The relief that washed over her face was immediate and profound. "Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I promise this will never happen again." "Actually," Marcus continued, "I want to propose something different." Elena looked confused, clearly not understanding where the conversation was heading. Marcus stood up and walked to the window of his study, looking out at the extensive gardens behind his home. He had never used most of the outdoor spaces, never appreciated the playground equipment that had been installed years ago for Emma's visits that rarely happened. "I have a proposition for you, Elena. But first, I want to be clear about something. What I witnessed today wasn't just trespassing or rule-breaking. It was a family taking care of each other under difficult circumstances. That's something I can respect." Elena remained silent, unsure how to respond. Marcus turned back to face her. "I'm going to offer you a different arrangement. Instead of working for the cleaning service, I want you to work directly for me. You would be responsible for maintaining my home, but with significantly better compensation and more flexible hours." "I don't understand, sir." "You would live here, Elena. You and all 4 children. There are plenty of rooms in this house that are never used. The children would have space to play, good schools in the district, and you would have job security." Elena's mouth fell open in shock. "Sir, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly accept something like that. We're strangers. You don't know anything about us." Marcus smiled for the first time since arriving home. "Elena, in the last hour I've learned more about character and family than I've seen in years. You took responsibility for 4 children when you could have easily let them become someone else's problem. You found a way to care for them while working multiple jobs. You brought them here not out of disrespect, but because you had no other choice, and you still prioritized their welfare." Elena shook her head slowly. "Mr. Blackwood, this is too much. I can't let you disrupt your life for people you just met. What if I told you that you wouldn't be disrupting my life? What if I told you that you and those children might be exactly what this house has been missing?" The conversation was interrupted by a soft knock on the study door. Elena jumped up quickly to answer it, and Carlos peeked his head inside. "Tio, Elena, Isabella needs to use the bathroom, but we don't know where it is." Elena looked mortified. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll take them outside immediately." "Nonsense," Marcus said, standing up. "Carlos, I'll show you where the guest bathroom is." As Marcus led the boy through the mansion's corridors, Carlos looked around with wide eyes at the paintings, sculptures, and luxury that surrounded them. But he stayed close to Marcus, clearly protective of his younger sister. "Is Tio Elena in trouble?" Carlos asked quietly as they walked. Marcus stopped and knelt down so he was at eye level with the boy. "No, Carlos. Elena is not in trouble. In fact, I think she's one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. Carlos studied Marcus's face carefully, as if trying to determine whether he could be trusted. She takes really good care of us. She works really hard. I can see that, Marcus replied. Tell me, Carlos, what do you think about school? I like it okay. I'm good at math and science. Elena helps us with homework every night after she gets home from work. The simple statement revealed so much about Elena's priorities. Despite working long hours at physically demanding jobs, she still made time to support the children's education. After showing Carlos and Isabella to the bathroom, Marcus returned to find Elena pacing nervously in his study. The other two children, Sophia and Miguel, were sitting quietly in the hallway, clearly unsure of what was expected of them. Elena, Marcus said as he re-entered the study, I want to be completely honest with you about why I'm making this offer. She looked at him expectantly. This house has been empty for 5 years. Not just of people, but of life. Of laughter. Of the kind of warmth I saw in that dining room today. You brought something here that I didn't even realize was missing. Elena sat down slowly, still processing his words. Marcus continued. I'm not offering this out of charity, though I understand why it might seem that way. I'm offering this because I think we might be able to help each other. You need stability and security for those children. I need to remember what it means to have a home instead of just a house. The honesty in his voice seemed to reach Elena. For the first time since he had discovered them in the dining room, she really looked at him instead of just seeing his wealth and power. You have a daughter, Elena said quietly. It wasn't a question. Marcus nodded. Emma. She's 9 now. I see her once a month if I'm lucky. And even then, it's awkward and stilted. I've forgotten how to talk to children. I've forgotten how to be around a family. Elena was quiet for a long moment, considering his words. Mr. Blackwood, what you're offering would change everything for us. The children would have security, good schools, space to grow. But what happens when you change your mind? What happens when having children around becomes inconvenient or noisy or messy? It was a fair question, and Marcus respected her for asking it. Elena, I'm 42 years old. I've built a successful business by making good decisions and honoring my commitments. This wouldn't be a whim or a temporary arrangement. If you agree to this, it would be with the understanding that this becomes your home for as long as you want it to be. Elena stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the grounds where the 4 children were now playing on the lawn under Richardson's watchful eye. The butler had appeared as if from nowhere and was ensuring their safety while giving Elena and Marcus privacy for their conversation. The children have been through so much trauma, Elena said softly. Losing their mother, adjusting to living with me, moving to a new school district. I want to make sure that any decision I make truly serves their best interests. Marcus joined her at the window. Outside, he could see Sophia and Isabella playing a game of tag while Miguel and Carlos kicked a soccer ball back and forth. It occurred to him that his perfectly manicured lawn had never seen such joyful use. What would they need to be happy here? Marcus asked. Elena smiled for the first time since he had discovered them. Space to be children. Security to know they won't have to move again. And adults who care about their well-being. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. This house has 8 bedrooms, Elena. More space than they could ever use. As for security, I can guarantee that. And as for adults who care. He paused, watching the children play. I think we both want what's best for them. Elena turned to face him fully. Can I ask you something, Mr. Blackwood? Marcus. And yes. Why now? Why are you making this offer to strangers when you could hire any housekeeper in the city? Marcus considered her question carefully. Because what I saw in that dining room today wasn't strangers eating in my house. It was a family taking care of each other. That's something money can't buy, Elena. That's something I've been searching for without even realizing it. The sound of children's laughter drifted through the window, and Marcus found himself imagining what it would be like to hear that sound regularly. To come home to a house that felt alive instead of empty. If we did this, Elena said slowly, there would have to be clear boundaries and expectations. I wouldn't want you to feel like your privacy or your routine was being invaded. Marcus almost laughed at the irony. Elena, my privacy and routine have been invaded every day for the past 5 years by emptiness and silence. I think 4 children and a caring adult might be exactly the kind of invasion I need. As if summoned by their conversation, All four children appeared at the study door, with Carlos once again serving as their spokesman. Tio Elena, are we in trouble? The nice man in the suit gave us cookies, but we weren't sure if we were supposed to take them. Elena looked at Marcus questioningly, and he nodded with amusement. Richardson had apparently taken it upon himself to provide refreshments for the unexpected young visitors. You're not in trouble, Elena assured them. Mr. Blackwood and I are just talking about some important things. Isabella, the youngest, stepped forward bravely. Is this your house? She asked Marcus directly. It is, Marcus confirmed, kneeling down to her level again. It's really big, she observed seriously. Do you live here all by yourself? I do. Isabella considered this information gravely. That must be really lonely. The simple observation from a 6-year-old hit Marcus harder than any business critique ever had. Yes, he admitted. Sometimes it is. Sophia, Elena's 8-year-old daughter, joined the conversation. If you wanted, we could visit sometimes. Elena says visiting people who are lonely is a nice thing to do. Marcus felt an unexpected tightening in his chest. These children, who had every reason to be focused on their own challenges and losses, were offering kindness to a stranger. That's a very generous offer, Marcus said softly. Miguel, Elena's 10-year-old son, had been quietly observing the adult conversation. Now he spoke up. Elena works really hard to take care of all of us. She's the best. The fierce loyalty and protectiveness in the boy's voice was clear. These children understood that Elena had sacrificed for them, and they were prepared to defend her against anyone they perceived as a threat. Marcus stood up and addressed all four children directly. I can see that Elena takes very good care of all of you, and I can see that you love and respect her very much. That tells me a lot about both Elena and about all of you. The children exchanged glances, unsure of how to interpret his formal tone. Marcus continued. I've asked Elena if she and all of you would like to come live here. This house has plenty of room for everyone, and I think it would be nice to have a real family here instead of just empty rooms. The children looked to Elena for guidance, clearly understanding that this was a major decision that would affect all their lives. Elena took a deep breath. Mr. Blackwood, Marcus, I need to think about this. I need to talk with the children privately and make sure they're comfortable with such a big change. Marcus nodded respectfully. Of course, this is a major decision for all of you. Take all the time you need. But, Elena continued, I want you to know that your offer is incredibly generous, and I'm deeply touched that you would trust us with your home. Carlos stepped forward and looked directly at Marcus. Sir, if we came to live here, would we be able to go to the good schools? Elena always talks about how she wants us to have better opportunities. Marcus smiled at the boy's directness. Yes, Carlos. The schools in this district are excellent, some of the best in the state. Sophia raised her hand as if she was in class. Would we have our own rooms? You would each have your own bedroom, with plenty of space for your things and room to play. Miguel had a more practical concern. What about our friends? Would we be able to see our friends from our old neighborhood? Marcus looked to Elena, realizing he didn't know where the children currently went to school or how far their old neighborhood was from his home. Elena answered, The children attend Lincoln Elementary, which is about 20 minutes from here. Their friends could definitely visit, and we could arrange for them to see their classmates. Isabella had been listening carefully to all the questions and answers. Now she tugged on Elena's dress to get her attention. What is it, mi amor? Elena asked, bending down to hear her whisper. Isabella's whisper was loud enough for everyone to hear. Does the nice man like children? Elena glanced at Marcus uncertainly. It was a crucial question from a child who had lost so much and needed reassurance about the adults in her life. Marcus addressed Isabella directly. You know what, Isabella? I thought I had forgotten how to like children. But meeting all of you today has reminded me how wonderful children can be. You're smart and kind and brave, and I think I would be very lucky to have you living in my house. The little girl beamed at his answer, and Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. He had spent years building walls around his heart after his divorce and estrangement from Emma. These four children were already beginning to crack those walls just by being themselves. Richardson appeared in the doorway with his usual perfect timing. Forgive the interruption, sir, but I thought the young people might enjoy seeing the library and the game room while you and Miss Rodriguez finish your discussion. Elena looked questioningly at Marcus, who nodded his approval. The children followed Richardson eagerly, chattering excitedly about books and games. With the children gone, Elena and Marcus found themselves alone again in the study. The energy in the room felt different now, less formal and more genuine. "They're remarkable children," Marcus said quietly. Elena smiled with obvious pride. "They are. They've been through so much, but they're resilient and loving and good. I just want to make sure I'm making the right decision for their future." Marcus sat down across from her again. "Elena, what questions do you have about this arrangement? What concerns you most?" Elena was quiet for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Honestly, I'm concerned about what happens when the novelty wears off. You're used to silence and order and privacy. Children are noisy and messy and unpredictable. What happens in 6 months when you realize you've made a mistake?" It was the same concern she had raised before, and Marcus understood why it worried her. The children had already experienced enough instability and loss. "Let me tell you something about my business, Elena. I don't make impulsive decisions. Before I commit to any major contract or partnership, I do extensive research and planning. I consider all the potential challenges and complications. This decision feels different because it's not about business, it's about people. But my commitment level is the same." Elena studied his face. "What kind of research would you do for a decision like this?" Marcus smiled. "I'd want to understand what the children need to thrive, what their routines are, what their interests are, what kind of support they need for school and activities. I'd want to understand how to make this transition as smooth as possible for them. And what about for you? What do you need from this arrangement?" It was a question Marcus hadn't fully considered. "I need to learn how to be part of a family again. I need to remember what it feels like to come home to people who are happy to see me. I need to understand how to care about something beyond profit margins and quarterly reports." Elena nodded slowly. "Those are honest answers." The following morning brought a whirlwind of activity that Marcus had never experienced in his perfectly ordered mansion. Elena had agreed to move in gradually over the next week, but the children were so excited about their new home that they had begged to spend the night immediately. Elena had reluctantly agreed, after extracting promises from all 4 children about being on their best behavior. Marcus woke to the sound of children's voices echoing through the halls, a sound that should have annoyed him but instead filled him with unexpected warmth. He found himself smiling as he dressed for the day, anticipating the energy that awaited him downstairs. In the kitchen, he discovered Elena preparing breakfast while simultaneously helping Isabella with her shoes and listening to Miguel practice reading aloud from a children's book. Sophia was carefully setting the table in the breakfast nook, counting out plates and utensils with serious concentration. Carlos was feeding a stray cat that had apparently wandered onto the property during the night. "Good morning," Marcus said as he entered the kitchen, causing Elena to look up from the stove with slight embarrassment. "I'm sorry if we woke you," she said quickly. "The children are early risers, and we're still getting used to the space." Marcus poured himself a cup of coffee from the pot Elena had prepared and surveyed the scene with genuine interest. "Actually, I've been awake since 6. I usually am." "What time do they normally get up?" "Around 6:30 during school days," Elena replied, flipping pancakes with practiced efficiency. "They like to have time to eat properly and get ready without rushing." Marcus noted the difference between Elena's simple, nutritious breakfast preparation and his usual routine of grabbing coffee and maybe a piece of toast before heading to the office. The children were gathered around the kitchen island, chattering about their plans for the day and asking Elena questions about their new surroundings. "Tio Elena," Isabella said, tugging on Elena's dress, "can we explore the big yard after breakfast?" "If Mr. Blackwood says it's okay," Elena replied, glancing at Marcus uncertainly. "It's Marcus," he corrected gently. "And, of course you can explore. Just stay where Elena can see you." Richardson appeared in the doorway with his usual impeccable timing. "Sir, I've taken the liberty of having the pool area inspected and cleaned. The safety covers have been removed, and I've ordered appropriate safety equipment for the young residents." Marcus raised an eyebrow. He hadn't swum in his pool for 3 years, but Richardson was already anticipating the needs of the children. "Thank you, Richardson. What else do we need to consider for their safety?" I've contacted a contractor to install safety locks on certain cabinets and to add railings to the upper balconies. I've also researched the enrollment procedures for the local schools, should the family wish to transfer the children. Elena paused in her breakfast preparation, clearly overwhelmed by the level of planning and consideration being put into their comfort. "This is all too much," she said quietly. "I don't want you to have to change your entire home for us." Marcus set down his coffee cup and looked at her directly. "Elena, this house has been a museum for 5 years. Making it safe and welcoming for children isn't changing it, it's giving it purpose." Carlos, who had finished feeding the cat, joined the conversation. "Mr. Marcus, what's that big room with all the books?" "The library," Marcus replied. "Do you like to read?" "Elena makes sure we all read every day. She says reading is the best way to learn about the world." Marcus smiled at Elena. "She's right. Would you like me to show you the library after breakfast?" All 4 children responded with enthusiastic agreement, and Marcus found himself looking forward to sharing one of his favorite rooms in the house with them. As they ate breakfast together, Marcus observed the easy dynamics between Elena and the children. She gently corrected table manners, encouraged conversation, and made sure everyone had enough to eat, all while managing to eat her own meal. It was a master class in multitasking that Marcus could only admire. "Elena," Marcus said as they finished eating, "we should discuss practical arrangements. School enrollment, medical information, legal considerations." Elena nodded seriously. "I have all their important documents with me. Birth certificates, medical records, school transcripts. I also have temporary guardianship papers for Isabella and Carlos." "What about permanent arrangements?" Marcus asked. Elena's expression grew sad. "I'm working with a lawyer on formal adoption proceedings for Isabella and Carlos. It's complicated and expensive, but I want them to have legal security." Marcus made a mental note to have his legal team research ways to expedite and fund the adoption process. These children needed stability, and bureaucratic delays shouldn't prevent Elena from providing it. After breakfast, Marcus gave the children a proper tour of the house, starting with the library. Their excitement was infectious as they explored rooms that had been closed and used for years. Sophia was particularly drawn to the music room, where she discovered a piano that had been sitting silent since Marcus's ex-wife had left. "Do you play?" Marcus asked as Sophia ran her fingers gently over the keys. "Elena's been teaching me a little bit," Sophia replied shyly. "But we don't have a piano at our apartment." Marcus looked at Elena questioningly. "You play piano?" Elena blushed slightly. "I took lessons when I was young. I've been teaching the children what I remember." "This piano hasn't been played in 5 years," Marcus said. "It would be wonderful to hear music in this room again." The tour continued to the game room, where the children discovered a pool table, air hockey, and several vintage arcade games. Marcus realized that his ex-wife had insisted on these additions for Emma's visits, but they had rarely been used. Now, watching the children's excitement, he understood their true purpose. Miguel was particularly interested in the workshop area in the basement, where Marcus had a collection of tools and equipment that he rarely used. "What do you build here?" Miguel asked. "Honestly, I don't," Marcus admitted. "I thought I would enjoy woodworking as a hobby, but I never found the time." Miguel studied the workbench and tools with obvious interest. "My dad taught me some basic carpentry before he died." Elena says he was really good with his hands. Marcus felt a pang of sadness for this boy who had lost his father so young. "Would you like to learn more? I could arrange for someone to teach you proper woodworking." Miguel's face lit up with genuine excitement. "Really? That would be amazing." Elena, who had been following the tour quietly, stepped forward. "Marcus, you don't need to arrange special activities or lessons. The children don't expect that level of attention. What if I want to provide it?" Marcus asked simply. "What if seeing them excited about learning makes me happy?" Elena studied his face carefully, as if trying to determine whether his generosity was genuine or just novelty that would fade over time. Isabella, meanwhile, had discovered the home theater in the basement. "Elena, look, it's like a movie place." Marcus chuckled at her amazement. "We could watch movies together sometimes, if you'd like." "What kind of movies do you like?" Carlos asked. It was a simple question, but Marcus realized he couldn't remember the last time he had watched a movie for pleasure rather than falling asleep to the news or financial reports. "I'm not sure," he admitted. What kind do you recommend? The children immediately launched into animated descriptions of their favorite films, from animated adventures to superhero stories. Marcus found himself genuinely interested in their recommendations and made mental notes about which movies to acquire for future family viewing. As the tour concluded, Marcus noticed that Elena had grown increasingly quiet. When the children ran off to explore the backyard under Richardson's supervision, Marcus asked her about her mood. "This is overwhelming," Elena said honestly. "In 24 hours, our entire lives have changed. The children are excited, but I'm terrified." Marcus guided her to a comfortable sitting area overlooking the gardens where they could keep an eye on the children while talking privately. "What frightens you most?" Marcus asked. Elena was quiet for a moment, watching Isabella chase butterflies while the older children kicked a soccer ball. "I'm afraid they'll get too attached to this lifestyle, and then something will happen and we'll have to leave. I'm afraid I'm being irresponsible by accepting so much from someone we barely know, and I'm afraid that I'm not qualified to be part of this world." Marcus considered her concerns carefully. "Elena, let me address those fears one by one. First, nothing is going to happen that will force you to leave. I'm not an impulsive person, and I don't make promises lightly. Second, you're not being irresponsible. You're providing opportunities for those children that you couldn't give them any other way. And third, what qualifies someone to be part of any world? Character? Integrity? The ability to love and care for others? If those are the qualifications, then you're overqualified." Elena smiled slightly at his last comment, but her worry remained evident. Marcus continued, "Can I tell you what I observed yesterday and this morning? I saw a woman who has taken responsibility for 4 children who aren't biologically hers, out of love rather than obligation. I saw children who are polite, well-behaved, and kind because someone has taken the time to teach them values. I saw a family that supports each other and finds joy in simple things. Those aren't qualities that money can buy, Elena. They're qualities that make a house into a home." "But what about your life?" Elena asked. "Your routine, your work, your privacy? How long before you start to resent having children running through your house and disrupting your peace?" It was a fair question, and Marcus took time to consider his answer honestly. "Yesterday morning, my biggest concern was whether my coffee would be the right temperature when I got to the office. I lived in a beautiful house that felt like a tomb. I had everything money could buy and nothing that actually mattered. This morning, I woke up to the sound of children laughing, and it was the best alarm clock I've ever had." Elena looked at him searchingly. "What about when one of them is sick in the middle of the night? What about when they have nightmares or need help with homework or want attention when you're trying to work? What about when they're loud and messy and inconvenient?" Marcus smiled. "Then I'll learn how to deal with sick children and nightmares and homework help. I'll learn how to balance work and family. And I'll probably discover that loud and messy is better than silent and empty." Through the window, they watched as Carlos helped Isabella climb onto a low tree branch while Sophia and Miguel collected interesting stones from the garden path. The children had already begun to make the outdoor spaces their own. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "can I ask you something personal?" She nodded. "When Maria died, you could have let the authorities place Isabella and Carlos in the system. You could have focused on just caring for your own 2 children. Why didn't you?" Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Because they're family. Because Maria would have done the same for Sophia and Miguel if something had happened to me. Because children need love and stability, not bureaucratic solutions. And that decision changed your life completely, didn't it? Made everything harder, more complicated, more expensive?" "Yes," Elena admitted. "Do you regret it?" Elena looked out at the 4 children playing together, their laughter carrying through the open windows. "Never. Not for a single moment." Marcus nodded. "Then, you understand why I'm making this offer. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that change everything." Richardson appeared in the doorway with his usual discreet knock. "Excuse me, sir. Miss Sophia is asking about lunch arrangements, and young Master Carlos would like to know if there are fishing opportunities in the lake." Marcus looked questioningly at Elena. "I hadn't even thought about the lake," he admitted. "I never use it." Elena stood up. "I should go help with lunch. The children are probably getting hungry." As she started to leave, Marcus called after her. "Elena, tonight, after the children are settled, would you join me for dinner? Just the two of us. I think we should discuss expectations and boundaries for this arrangement. Elena hesitated. That's probably a good idea. There are definitely things we should clarify. As Elena left to check on the children, Marcus remained in the sitting room, contemplating the changes that were already occurring in his home and his life. The house felt different, alive in a way it hadn't been for years. But he also recognized Elena's concerns about the dramatic nature of these changes. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his assistant, calling about an important meeting that had been scheduled for the following day. Mr. Blackwood, the Japanese investors are expecting you at 9 a.m. tomorrow for the final contract negotiations. Should I confirm your attendance? Marcus looked out at the children playing in his yard, at Elena helping Isabella with something in the garden, at the scene of domestic happiness that had materialized in his previously empty world. Reschedule it, Marcus said without hesitation. Sir, this meeting has been planned for weeks. The investors are flying in specifically for this negotiation. Then, schedule it for next week when I can give it proper attention. Right now, I have more important things to focus on. After ending the call, Marcus realized he had just made a decision that would have been unthinkable 24 hours ago. He had put family considerations ahead of a multi-million-dollar business deal. The realization should have concerned him, but instead, it felt liberating. At lunchtime, Marcus joined the family around the kitchen island again. The children had worked up appetites from their morning exploration and were full of questions about their new environment. Marcus, Miguel said between bites of his sandwich, Richardson told us there are bicycles in the garage. Could we use them sometime? Marcus realized he had completely forgotten about the bicycles, which had been purchased for Emma's visits, but rarely used. Of course, we should make sure they're the right sizes and in good working condition. I could help with that, Carlos offered. Elena taught me how to check tire pressure and adjust seats. Elena taught you bike maintenance? Marcus asked, impressed. Carlos nodded proudly. Elena teaches us lots of practical things. She says being able to take care of yourself is important. Marcus glanced at Elena, who was quietly eating her lunch while monitoring the children's conversation. Her approach to parenting impressed him more each hour he spent observing it. What other practical things has Elena taught you? Marcus asked the children. Sophia raised her hand enthusiastically. Cooking. Elena's teaching me how to make pancakes and soup and sandwiches. And I can do laundry, Miguel added. Elena says everyone should know how to take care of their own clothes. Isabella, not to be outdone, chimed in. I can set the table and feed the cat and water plants. Marcus smiled at their pride in their capabilities. Those are all very important skills. What practical things do you know how to do? Carlos asked Marcus directly. It was an innocent question, but it made Marcus pause. Most of his daily needs were handled by staff. Richardson managed his household, his assistant handled his schedule, his housekeeper maintained his living spaces. He had become so successful that he had inadvertently isolated himself from basic life skills. I'm good with business and finance, Marcus said slowly. I can negotiate contracts and analyze investments. But I think Elena could teach me a few things about practical daily life. Elena looked up from her lunch with surprise. I'm sure you know plenty of important things that we could learn from you too. The afternoon passed quickly as Marcus found himself increasingly involved in the children's activities. He helped Carlos adjust the bicycle seats and discovered that he actually enjoyed the simple mechanical task. He listened to Sophia play piano and was amazed by her natural musical ability. He watched Miguel explore the workshop area and saw genuine potential for the boy to develop real craftsmanship skills. Isabella attached herself to Marcus throughout the afternoon, apparently having decided that he was a safe and interesting adult. She asked him endless questions about his house, his work, and his life, with the fearless curiosity that only young children possess. Why don't you have more furniture in the big rooms? Isabella asked as they passed through one of the formal living areas. Marcus paused to consider her question. I guess I never thought about what to do with all the space. Elena says furniture should be for people to use, not just to look at. It was a simple observation, but it highlighted how differently Elena and Marcus approached their living spaces. Elena created functional, comfortable areas where people could gather and interact. Marcus had maintained showcases that looked beautiful but served no real purpose. As evening approached, Marcus realized he was dreading the dinner conversation with Elena, not because he didn't want to spend time with her, but because he was afraid she might decide that this arrangement was too complicated or risky for the children. The children's bedtime routine provided Marcus with an education in family dynamics that he had been missing for years. Elena managed to coordinate baths, homework review, story time, and tucking in 4 children with an efficiency that amazed him. But more than the logistics, he was struck by the individual attention she gave each child, addressing their specific needs and concerns before they settled down for sleep. "Can we have pancakes again tomorrow?" Sophia asked as Elena tucked her into the bed in her new room. "We'll see what everyone wants for breakfast," Elena replied diplomatically. "Will Marcus still be here tomorrow?" Isabella asked with concern. Elena glanced at Marcus, who was standing in the doorway observing the bedtime routine. "Marcus lives here, mi amor. This is his home. But will he want to have breakfast with us again?" Marcus stepped forward. "Isabella, I would very much like to have breakfast with all of you tomorrow. And lunch and dinner too, if that's okay with everyone." Isabella beamed with satisfaction and settled back into her pillow. "I like it when grown-ups eat with us. It makes meals more fun." After all 4 children were finally settled, Marcus and Elena found themselves alone in his formal dining room, sharing a quiet dinner that Richardson had prepared. The contrast with the morning's chaotic, joyful breakfast was striking. "They're wonderful children," Marcus said as he cut his steak. "You've done an incredible job with them." Elena smiled tiredly. "They make it easy. They're resilient and loving despite everything they've been through." Marcus set down his fork and looked at Elena directly. "I want to be completely honest with you about something." Elena tensed slightly, clearly preparing for him to announce that he had reconsidered his offer. "I haven't been this happy in years," Marcus continued. "I thought success and wealth would be enough to satisfy me. But today, helping Carlos with his bicycle and listening to Sophia play piano and answering Isabella's questions about everything, I felt more fulfilled than I have in any business meeting or boardroom." Elena relaxed visibly. They have that effect on people. Children remind adults what's really important. "Elena, I want to make this arrangement work for the long term. But I realize that requires more than just good intentions. We need to establish clear expectations and boundaries." Elena nodded. "I've been thinking about that too." Marcus pulled out a notepad, his business instincts taking over. "Let's start with practical issues. What do the children need for school? What's their schedule like? What activities are they involved in?" For the next hour, they discussed the logistics of integrating 4 children into Marcus's previously solitary life. School enrollment, medical care, extracurricular activities, social connections with friends, and the dozens of other details that come with responsible parenting. "What about your role in their lives?" Elena asked. "How much involvement do you want in their daily care and decision-making?" It was a crucial question, and Marcus took time to consider it carefully. "I want to be involved, Elena. Not as someone who just provides the house and resources, but as someone who cares about their well-being and development. I want to help with homework and attend school events, and be present for the important moments in their lives." Elena studied his face. "That's a significant commitment, Marcus. Children need consistency. They need adults who show up reliably, not just when it's convenient." "I understand that. I'm prepared to reorganize my priorities to make sure I can be that kind of consistent presence." Elena was quiet for a moment. "What about discipline? What happens when one of them misbehaves or makes a mistake? They're good kids, but they're still kids." Marcus realized he hadn't considered this aspect of parenting. "I assume I would follow your lead on discipline. You know them best, and you've already established good behavioral expectations. But if we're going to be partners in raising them, you need to be comfortable with setting boundaries and enforcing consequences too." The word partners resonated with Marcus in a way he hadn't expected. The idea of sharing parental responsibility, of working together toward common goals for the children's benefit, appealed to him enormously. "Teach me," Marcus said simply. "I want to learn how to be the kind of adult these children deserve." Elena smiled for the first time during their serious conversation. "You're already on the right track, Marcus. The fact that you're asking these questions and thinking about their needs shows that you understand what's important." As their dinner conversation concluded, Marcus felt a sense of optimism and purpose that had been absent from his life for years. The challenges ahead were real and significant, but, for the first time, he was facing challenges that truly mattered. "Elena," Marcus said as they prepared to end their evening, "thank you for giving me this opportunity. I know the risk is primarily yours and the children's, but I want you to know that I don't take your trust lightly." Elena stood up from the table and looked around the formal dining room where they had shared their meal. "You know what this room needs." Marcus followed her gaze around the elegant but sterile space. What? 2 weeks into their new living arrangement, Marcus discovered that integrating a family into his life was far more complex and rewarding than he had anticipated. The mansion that had once echoed with emptiness now pulsed with the constant activity of 4 energetic children, and Marcus found himself adapting to rhythms he had never experienced. The morning of the children's first day at their new school marked a significant milestone. Marcus had arranged for them to enroll at Hillcrest Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the district. As he observed Elena helping them prepare for this transition, he was struck by her mixture of excitement and anxiety about the opportunities this change would provide. "Remember to introduce yourselves to new classmates," Elena instructed as she adjusted Carlos's tie. "And if anyone asks about your living situation, just say you live with your Aunt Elena and Mr. Marcus in the Hillcrest neighborhood." Marcus watched from the kitchen doorway as Elena performed the morning routine with practiced efficiency. Isabella was nervous about starting kindergarten at a new school, while Sophia worried about making friends in her third-grade class. Miguel seemed excited about the advanced math program available to fifth graders, and Carlos was looking forward to trying out for the middle school soccer team. "Elena," Marcus said as he joined them for breakfast, "I've arranged to drive them to school this morning. I'd like to meet their teachers and make sure they're settling in well." Elena looked surprised. "Marcus, you don't need to do that. I can handle the school enrollment." "I want to do it," Marcus replied firmly. "These children are going to be an important part of my life. I want their teachers to know that they have adults who are invested in their education." The drive to Hillcrest Academy gave Marcus an opportunity to talk with the children about their expectations and concerns. Isabella sat beside him in the front seat, chattering nervously about whether she would like her new teacher. The older children discussed the differences they expected between their previous public school and this private institution. "Will the other kids be really rich?" Sophia asked from the back seat. Marcus considered how to answer honestly without creating anxiety. "Some of them will come from wealthy families, but that doesn't make them better or worse than you. What matters is how kind and respectful you are to each other." Carlos had been quiet during the drive, and Marcus sensed his particular anxiety about fitting in at the middle school level. "Carlos, is there anything specific you're worried about?" The boy hesitated before answering. "What if the other kids ask why Elena and I aren't related by blood? What if they think it's weird that we live with you?" Marcus pulled into the school parking lot and turned to address all 4 children directly. "Listen to me, all of you. There is nothing weird or wrong about your family situation. Elena loves you and takes care of you, which makes her your real family. I care about you and want you to have the best opportunities possible. That makes us all a family, even if we don't look like families in movies or TV shows." Isabella reached over and patted Marcus's arm reassuringly. "It's okay, Marcus. We know we're a family." The innocence and acceptance in her voice touched Marcus deeply. These children had adapted to loss and change with remarkable grace, and they were teaching him daily lessons about resilience and love. The enrollment process at Hillcrest Academy went smoothly, thanks to Marcus's reputation and generous donations to the school over the years. Each teacher was welcoming and seemed genuinely interested in helping the children succeed in their new environment. Mrs. Patterson, Isabella's kindergarten teacher, was particularly warm and encouraging. "Isabella, we're so excited to have you in our class. We have lots of fun activities planned, and I think you're going to make wonderful friends here." Isabella, who had been hiding behind Elena's leg, slowly warmed up to her new teacher and began asking questions about the classroom pets and art supplies. At the middle school level, Carlos's homeroom teacher, Mr. Rodriguez, immediately put the boy at ease by speaking to him in Spanish and asking about his interests in soccer and mathematics. "Carlos, I coach the soccer team, and We can always use players who are dedicated to both athletics and academics. Marcus observed these interactions with growing confidence that the children would thrive in their new educational environment. But he also noted the subtle ways that wealth and privilege operated in this setting, from the casual mentions of family vacations to exclusive locations to the assumption that all students would have extensive extracurricular activities. That evening, as the children worked on homework at the kitchen island while Elena prepared dinner, Marcus found himself reflecting on the day's experiences. The transition to Hillcrest Academy would provide amazing opportunities for the children, but it would also expose them to a world of wealth and privilege that could be intimidating or alienating. "How was everyone's first day?" Marcus asked as he joined them for dinner. The children's responses were enthusiastic and detailed. Isabella loved her teacher and had made a friend named Emma who shared her interest in drawing. Sophia was excited about the school's music program and had signed up for choir. Miguel was thrilled with the science laboratory and the advanced math curriculum. Carlos had indeed tried out for the soccer team and felt confident about making the squad. "What about you, Elena?" Marcus asked. "How did you spend your day?" Elena smiled tiredly. "I spent most of it worrying about how they were adjusting. But I also started researching some of the volunteer opportunities at the school. I'd like to be involved in their education." Marcus nodded approvingly. "That's wonderful. What kind of volunteer work interests you?" "The literacy program looks promising. I could help younger students with reading skills. And they need classroom assistance for field trips and special events." As dinner continued, Marcus found himself observing the easy dynamics between Elena and the children. She listened to their stories with genuine interest, asked thoughtful questions about their experiences, and gently encouraged them to try new activities and make new friends. "Marcus," Miguel said as they cleared the dinner dishes, "would it be okay if I joined the robotics club at school? They meet twice a week after school." "Of course," Marcus replied. "What got you interested in robotics?" "They showed us some of the robots the older kids have built, and it looks really cool. It's like building and programming at the same time." Marcus made a mental note to research robotics kits and programming resources that Miguel might enjoy at home as well. The boys' enthusiasm for learning and building was infectious. Later that evening, after the children were settled with homework and bedtime routines, Marcus and Elena found themselves sitting on the back patio, watching the sunset over the extensive grounds of the property. "They seem to be adjusting well," Elena said quietly. Marcus nodded. "Better than I hoped. They're remarkable kids." Elena was quiet for a moment before speaking again. "Marcus, I want to talk to you about something that's been on my mind." Marcus turned to face her, noting the serious tone in her voice. "What is it?" "Money. We need to discuss money and expenses and how this arrangement works financially." Marcus had been expecting this conversation, though he had hoped Elena would feel comfortable enough to approach the topic when she was ready. "What specifically concerns you?" Marcus asked. Elena took a deep breath. "Everything. School supplies, clothes, medical expenses, extracurricular activities. These children have never been in a position to participate in expensive programs or buy premium equipment. I don't want to take advantage of your generosity, but I also don't want them to miss out on opportunities because I can't afford them." Marcus considered his response carefully. This was a delicate topic that touched on pride, independence, and the vast differences in their financial situations. "Elena, let me be direct about this. The amount of money required to provide these children with excellent education, healthcare, clothes, and activities is insignificant compared to my resources. But I understand that you need to feel like you're contributing to their well-being." Elena nodded. "Exactly. I don't want to become someone who just relies on your wealth to provide for them." Marcus stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, looking out over the gardens that the children had already begun to explore and enjoy. "What if we structured this differently?" Marcus suggested. "What if you took on the role of managing this household? Not just cleaning, but coordinating all the children's needs, managing schedules, handling the countless details that come with running a home, and raising 4 children." Elena looked intrigued but uncertain. "What do you mean?" Marcus turned back to face her. "I mean a real job, Elena. Full-time household manager with a salary that reflects the importance of the work you're doing. You would be responsible for the children's daily care, educational support, activity coordination, and general household management. It would be demanding work, but it would be legitimate employment that you could take pride in. Elena considered this proposition carefully. What kind of salary are you talking about? Marcus named a figure that made Elena's eyes widen in shock. It was more than 3 times what she had been earning through the cleaning service. Marcus, that's too much. I couldn't possibly accept that kind of money. Elena, think about what you're actually doing. You're providing full-time childcare for 4 children, which alone would cost $60,000 a year if I hired professional nannies. You're managing a household with 37 rooms, coordinating schedules, handling emergencies, and providing educational support. You're doing the work of multiple professional staff members. The salary I'm suggesting reflects the value of what you're contributing. Elena stood up and began pacing the patio, clearly struggling with the implications of Marcus's offer. But what about my independence? Elena asked. What happens if this arrangement doesn't work out? What happens if you change your mind about having us here? Marcus sat down in one of the patio chairs and looked at Elena directly. Then, you would have several years of excellent work experience managing a complex household, and you would have a substantial savings account to provide security for the children while you find your next position. Elena stopped pacing and sat down across from Marcus. You've really thought this through, haven't you? I've thought about very little else for the past 2 weeks, Marcus admitted. I want this arrangement to work, Elena, not just for my benefit, but for yours and the children's. That means creating a structure that respects your contributions and provides long-term security. Elena was quiet for several minutes, considering Marcus's proposal. Finally, she spoke. If I accept this position, I want to be clear about expectations and boundaries. I want a written job description and clear performance standards. I don't want to be in a situation where personal feelings get confused with professional responsibilities. Marcus smiled at her practical approach. Agreed. We should treat this like any other important employment arrangement. Clear expectations, regular reviews, and mutual respect for professional boundaries. And the children? Elena asked. How do we handle their understanding of this arrangement? We tell them the truth, Marcus replied. That you're taking care of our home and our family because you're good at it, and because it's important work. They'll understand that you're working and contributing, not just accepting charity. Elena nodded slowly. I think I can accept those terms. Marcus extended his hand to Elena, and she shook it firmly. Welcome to your new job, Household Manager Rodriguez. Elena laughed at his formal tone. Thank you, Mr. Blackwood. I'll do my best to justify your confidence in me. As they settled into more comfortable conversation, Marcus realized that this professional structure would actually make their personal relationship easier to navigate. Elena would have clear status and authority in the household, and that the children would see her as someone whose work was valued and respected. Elena, Marcus said as their evening conversation began to wind down. There's something else I want to discuss with you. Elena looked at him expectantly. Emma, my daughter, is supposed to visit next weekend. It will be the first time she's been here since you and the children moved in. Elena's expression grew concerned. How do you think she'll react to sharing her father's attention with 4 other children? Marcus sighed heavily. I honestly don't know. Emma and I have a complicated relationship. She's 9 years old, but she's already learned to see me as someone who disappoints her. Her mother has shared custody, and Emma usually seems relieved when our visits end. Elena studied Marcus's face, noting the pain and regret in his voice when he spoke about his daughter. What kind of things do you usually do together during her visits? Elena asked. Marcus looked embarrassed. We don't really have established activities. Usually I take her to expensive restaurants or shopping. Sometimes we go to movies. But our conversations are awkward, and she seems bored most of the time. Elena nodded thoughtfully. 9-year-old girls don't usually enjoy formal restaurants or shopping as much as adults think they do. They want to feel like they're having adventures and being included in interesting activities. What would you suggest? Elena smiled. Let her be part of our family routine for the weekend. Let her help cook meals, play with the other children, participate in normal family activities. She might enjoy being a big sister figure to Isabella and Sophia. Marcus felt a surge of hope at Elena's suggestion. Do you think the children would welcome her? Children are usually eager to include other children in their activities, especially if the adults set a positive tone. Isabella has been asking about your daughter ever since we moved in. Marcus realized that Elena's presence and the children's natural inclusiveness might provide exactly what his relationship with Emma had been missing. Instead of trying to entertain his daughter with expensive outings, he could include her in the warm family environment that had developed in his home. Would you be comfortable having Emma join our household routine for the weekend? Marcus asked. Of course, Elena replied. She's your daughter, Marcus. This is her home too. That night, as Marcus prepared for bed, he found himself anticipating Emma's visit with excitement rather than dread for the first time in years. The thought of his daughter experiencing the warmth and energy that now filled his home gave him hope that they might finally connect in meaningful ways. The following morning brought the usual flurry of activity as the children prepared for their second day at Hillcrest Academy. But this time, Marcus noticed, their movements were more confident, and their excitement was focused on specific activities and friendships rather than general anxiety about the unknown. Sophia bounded into the kitchen with news that she had been selected for the school choir, while Miguel announced that the robotics club had accepted his application. Carlos reported that soccer tryouts had gone well, and Isabella couldn't stop talking about the class pet hamster that she would get to help care for. It sounds like you're all finding your places at the new school, Marcus said as he helped Isabella with her backpack. Mr. Marcus, Isabella said seriously, when Emma comes to visit, can she come to school with us? I want to show her my classroom and introduce her to my teacher. Marcus was touched by Isabella's immediate desire to include his daughter in their activities. That's a wonderful idea, Isabella. We'll ask Emma what she would like to do. As he drove the children to school, Marcus found himself looking forward to the day's work with more enthusiasm than he had felt in years. Knowing that he would return home to a house full of life and activity motivated him to be more efficient and focused during business hours. At the office, Marcus's assistant, Jennifer, noticed the change in his demeanor immediately. Mr. Blackwood, you seem different lately. More energetic, if you don't mind me saying. Marcus smiled as he reviewed his calendar for the day. I've had some significant changes in my personal life, Jennifer. Good changes that are affecting everything else in positive ways. As the morning progressed, Marcus found himself thinking about Elena's new role as household manager and the structure they were creating for their family arrangement. He made notes about setting up proper employment documentation, health insurance coverage, and retirement planning for Elena's position. But beyond the practical considerations, Marcus realized that having Elena as a professional partner in managing their household would allow him to focus on being a father figure to the children rather than trying to coordinate all the logistical details of their care. When Marcus returned home that evening, he discovered that Elena had already begun implementing systems to organize the children's schedules, school communications, and household routines. She had created a family calendar on the kitchen wall that tracked everyone's activities, appointments, and commitments. This is impressive, Marcus said as he studied the detailed organization Elena had put in place. You really do have a talent for management. Elena smiled with obvious pride in her work. It's actually very satisfying to create order out of chaos. And the children like being able to see what's planned for each day. During dinner, the children shared more stories about their school experiences and asked Marcus about his work. For the first time, Marcus found himself describing his business activities in terms that children could understand, and their genuine interest in his explanations made him see his own work from a fresh perspective. Do you help people with money? Sophia asked. In a way, Marcus replied. I help companies grow bigger so they can provide more jobs for people and create products that make life better. Miguel looked thoughtful. So your work helps lots of families like ours? Marcus paused, considering the boy's observation. Yes, I suppose it does. I never thought about it that way before. Emma's arrival on Friday afternoon created a tension in the household that Marcus hadn't anticipated. His 9-year-old daughter stood in the front doorway clutching a small suitcase, her expression carefully neutral as she surveyed the changes in her father's home. The sound of children's voices echoing from the kitchen clearly surprised her. Marcus knelt down to Emma's level, noting how much she had grown since their last visit 6 weeks ago. Her blonde hair was longer, and she carried herself with a new maturity that made him realize how much of her development he was missing. Hello, sweetheart, Marcus said gently. I'm so glad you're here. Emma allowed him to hug her, but Marcus could feel the stiffness in her small body. Dad, whose voices are those? Mom said you had some people staying here. Before Marcus could answer, Isabella appeared in the hallway, drawn by curiosity about the new arrival. She stopped when she saw Emma, her eyes widening with excitement. Are you Emma? Isabella asked with the directness that only young children possess. We've been waiting to meet you. I'm Isabella, and I'm 6, and I live here now with my cousins and Elena. Emma stared at Isabella with confusion and something that might have been resentment. This little girl was clearly comfortable in Emma's father's home, displaying an ease and familiarity that as the evening wound down and the children settled into their homework routines, Marcus and Elena discussed plans for Emma's upcoming visit. They talked about activities that would allow Emma to bond with the other children while also giving Marcus one-on-one time with his daughter. The most important thing, Elena said, is for Emma to feel like she belongs here. She needs to see that having other children around doesn't mean there's less love available for her. It means there's more love in the house overall. Marcus nodded, hoping that Elena's wisdom about children and families would prove accurate. Emma's visit would be a crucial test of whether their new family arrangement could truly work for everyone involved. As he settled into bed that night, Marcus realized that his life had become more complex but infinitely more meaningful since Elena and the children had become part of it. The challenges ahead were real, but for the first time in years, he was facing them with hope and excitement rather than resignation and loneliness. The sound of children's laughter drifted down the hallway from their rooms as they settled down for sleep, and Marcus smiled as he recognized that this sound had become the best part of every day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities, but tonight his house truly felt like a home. Children's artwork on the walls, drawings, and school projects that make it feel like a family dining room instead of a restaurant. Marcus smiled at the image. I think that sounds perfect. As they said goodnight and went to their respective rooms, Marcus found himself looking forward to tomorrow in a way he hadn't experienced in years. The house still felt unfamiliar with its new energy and purpose, but it was beginning to feel like home. I have a question for you too, Marcus said. What would you need from me to feel secure in this arrangement? Elena considered carefully before answering. I would need to know that you see us as people, not as a project or an experiment. I would need to know that if you have concerns or frustrations, you'll communicate directly with me instead of just asking us to leave. And I would need to know that the children's well-being comes first, always. Marcus stood up and extended his hand to Elena. I can commit to all of that. The question is, are you willing to take a chance on this arrangement? Elena looked at his outstretched hand for a long moment. This decision would change everything for her and the 4 children she had come to love as her own. But as she thought about the opportunities it would provide for them, the security it would offer, and the genuine warmth she had seen in Marcus's interactions with the children, she found herself believing that sometimes the biggest risks led to the greatest rewards. She reached out and shook his hand firmly. Yes, Marcus, I think we'd like to try.